So I'm introducing this episode of the KrakCast because, we're not quite sure how to frame this. We might have to actually create an entire new sub-series of headings and I'm calling it Krakow's Mystery Objects. Things you've walked by. And I always wondered, that's the mystery objects was the end of the name. Obviously, this is like a subtext kind of paragraph, mystery objects you walk by and you're not quite sure what they're for. Clearly a part of the city's history, its architecture, but strange, And the ones I want to talk about this week are... Okay.
Yeah, strange.
Right, okay. What are they called in Polish? What do we think they're called in Polish? Because this is the end of a long investigation, so we're going to unspill this like a Tarantino movie.
Stare odbojnice.
Okay, which means stuff. And basically, these things, you'll have seen them, but you won't be sure where you've seen them, but you're about to know what I'm talking about. They are very phallic in their appearance, and outside of many buildings entrances, you'll see one, sometimes two sprouting together, usually with a healthy large mushroom like helmet on top, and you'll have often wondered if you're like me, what the hell are they for? They're everywhere.
Well, just to clarify, they're on the ground at the corner of the entrance to these old buildings.
Or
it looks
the like the stairs as well. Sometimes.
It looks like from certain vantage points, if you're walking around the city, particularly when it's a bit more empty, that's when they're a bit more noticeable. That there's.
I think they're always noticeable. It's a big metal dick on the ground.
There's a race of iron dicks that are all over Krakow, and we needed. And I was just sitting there one, and I was up in the main square a few days ago. And
explain how this came into your mind.
It was last weekend. I was taking a stroll around. It was very quiet, and I just started thinking to myself, I never figured out what the hell they are, because
You're being
everybody.
Really careful with this, Dave. You're really kind of dancing around this, eh?
Well, yeah, okay. Well, look, I've always.
It's a hard one, isn't it?
Discussed this with a few beers on me down the pub, where everybody seems to have a different theory. And, I said to myself, well, what are they for? And then I said to myself, they're for tying up horses. And then I said to myself, what did I base that on? And when I got home, I started Googling it, and I texted you.
Yeah.
What did you think they were?
Well, I had a bit of an insight into this because I had a conversation about these, strangely enough, and I don't want to explain the origins of that, but years ago with a friend of mine who's a professional guide here in town, had some special knowledge about this, and when you texted me, I immediately texted him to get an explanation. I shared it with you, and that's kind of the background for for this episode.
That took a while, though. In the interim, you didn't have a fucking clue.
Well, I didn't buy the horse thing for a couple of reasons.
I had a conversation, and you texted me.
I didn't buy the horse explanation for a couple of reasons. One, they're on the ground. It's too low to tie up a horse. Two, why would you tie up a horse at the entrance to a building? That makes no sense at all. And three, how do you, it didn't look like something you could... It's just inconvenient generally. It just doesn't make sense.
That's why I started texting other people. And then I said to myself, what was the genesis of the whole horse theory? Where did that even come from? And the name kept springing into my head. Michael Collins. And I knew it. I texted Collins, and straight away he pinged back, they're for tying up horses. And I'm like, well, this definitely can't be true. I got this from Collins. So Michael instantly texted a friend of his who's a prominent speaker. He's Polish. He's from Krakow. He lives in Sydney as well. Who instantly texted back on, I haven't a fucking clue, but I've texted everybody I know. And none of them knew.
So the algorithms in Silicon Valley are detecting the traffic on this.
Right?
Krakow penises.
Talking about like big hard dicks, yeah.
Then I texted Fergie, who said, great one, I think they're boot scrapers. And I'd heard that off loads of people as well. The boot scraper theory it brought me back as well. Never made much sense to me either, though. And then I heard protection. The first person who said protection, I do think you kind of half guessed that, but you said it in a different way. You said it was for like keeping Josh. Then it was like it's for keeping traffic out of certain areas.
It's protecting masonry. The corners of masonry is always very delicate, easy to damage. And it was protecting masonry from what exactly I wasn't sure, but I knew it was something about protecting the sharp edge of the corner.
It was like protecting masonry from having large chocolate biscuits hurled at them, wasn't it? Well, okay, I need to explain because...
or maybe you don't.
My country of origin, people of my generation would be familiar with a popular confectionery item known as a wagon wheel, which was a large chocolate-covered kind of marshmallow and biscuit disc. And which, of course, wagon wheel. Anyway, keep those two words in mind because that is something of a clue to the.
Well, let's just go ahead and jump to it then, because
I hate wagon wheels. They've marshmallow and jam. Inside.
They're not good. They're not good. Not good. A Tunnock's kind of crunchy bar is.
So it turns out that the purpose of these things is to protect the masonry, especially the corner, from the wheels of wagons that would have been driven through the entrances, right? Now, we forget today that the ground floor of these buildings, these old kamenices, the ground floor was always used, frequently used, most of the time used for the wagons and the horses, basically. And people lived upstairs. Nobody lived on the ground floor, except the servants, maybe, or they lived in the basement. But the ground floor was basically for, the dirty work that was associated with, the maintenance of the house and whatnot. And that included horses and the wagons that they pulled. And so to make sure that the metal wheels of wagons wouldn't bang into the entranceway and chip away at the masonry, these things were put down there to, protect them. That's the whole point.
And actually, there's an interesting kind of sociological observation there in the sense that you're probably your typical carter, as I believe the term is in English.
Yeah.
Back in those days was probably not so very dissimilar to the, the modern day white van man in a sense that, he had a lot of deliveries to make within a certain period of time. He was probably paid for delivery. So his kind of approach to parking and, general...
Probably drunk too. But.
Driving caution was... less than optimal.
Now, strangely enough, given how hilarious the subject is and how many people look at these and say, what the hell is that? There's strangely little discussion of this online, Dave. You came up with a really good word to describe how difficult it is to find information on Google.
Yeah, but it's ungoogleable because...
Ungoogleable. That's a great word.
Because we couldn't decide what one would call such a thing in English because we didn't know what the purpose was. So, we didn't know if it was for horses, we didn't know anything really. So I spent a hilarious hour just trying to Google it and, iron, dick-shaped Krakow exterior building. I was getting some really bizarre results, man.
I'll bet.
Yeah. And that was I found the whole thing.
What kind of ads you're getting now?
I found the whole thing interesting because we had to go back to a previous time where we used technology. We leveraged technology like WhatsApp, and we said to ourselves, right, we don't know something. It's not on Google for once. Let's get everyone that we know that might know and ask them, and we'll eventually get a credible answer. And eventually you sent me that article proving that it's protecting masonry outside buildings.
Yeah,
however,
what?
They look nothing like the ones
wait,
in
let me
Krakow.
explain,
and the article doesn't mention Krakow once, so I consider this mystery still open.
So this is a link, and I'll put it up on our Facebook page, and this was given to me by my friend that I asked. Thanks, Martin. And it's a fairly detailed article about it, with lots of photographs taken in Łódź, the city of Łódź. The thing is that these, what were they called? Odbojnice? Mm-hmm. What's the English word? I have no idea what they are.
Kind of like bumpers.
Bumper barrier or something like that, yeah. So whereas we have metal penises here in Krakow, for some reason in Łódź, they're actually typically in the form of like a gnome or a dwarf or something like that, right? Don't know why, but the explanation I got from my friend Martin, who's is educated in the ways of metal penises and things like that, is that in Łódź, at that time when these things were used, and we're talking 150, 200, 250 years ago, actually that might be a little bit too far back for Łódź, but anyway, Łódź was a much more prosperous place than Krakow. And these kamienices, these buildings were owned by wealthy merchants, wealthy people involved with the textile industry in Łódź, of course. And so they took on an artistic kind of form to reflect their prosperity, whereas in Krakow they were strictly functional. Right?
What were they supposed to be reflecting?
And so,
what was their function?
And these things, we have examples from Krakow and Łódź. They must be in use in older cities like, Wrocław and Warsaw, maybe a different case because of the war and everything. I don't know. But surely
the masonry there. Yeah.
Surely in other cities in Krakow, other cities in Poland and elsewhere in Europe, somebody else had to use these things.
I have a suggestion for a name for them, actually, which would be, with apologies to aficionados of yacht rock, and I would call them a Steely Dan.
Yeah, Steely Dan. Metal vibrator from where? Where is that from?
William Burroughs.
Remember else, yeah. You and the references today, Josh. Nobody's going to get these things at all.
Trust me, there's always someone out there.
Okay. Okay, so whoever that someone is, please,
a virile kind of.
Please write in and let us know that you got those, please.
Yacht rock.
All right, so basically the explanation we're going to go with, Dave isn't completely convinced, but the best explanation we have is that these things were meant to protect the corners of the masonry from the metal wheels of wagons taken into these buildings.
Yeah, okay.
That's it?
Yeah, no, I'm happy with that. Happy with that. And with that, we can conclude the first episode of Krakow's Mystery Objects.
And please post your own metal penis pictures on the Facebook entry for this episode. We're curious because we've all seen them, but I can't remember exactly where they are.
I have to say they're on nearly every corner in the old town, and I've seen many a stag make merriment, shall we say, with picture.
And the odd hen.
Yes,
I don't know what to say.
Ripe for satire.
Yeah, exactly. So I have no idea how we're going to title this episode. I don't know.
Well, that's kind of a daft thing to say, but by the time someone gets around to hearing you say that, they will have already seen the title
that's
of
true
the
too. No, I'm just thinking if Facebook is going to reject certain words or titles that we could come up with.
Never mind the picture you're going to put up with.
I have no idea how that's going to work. Anyway, well, as Dave said, first entry in our kind of a new subgenre of our show.
Countdown to Ecstasy.
Stuff you've seen but have no idea what the hell it's all about.
Post a picture if there's stuff you want us to explain.
Or make an effort to explain it, I guess.
Black holes, whatever.
KrakCast.pl, all our back episodes. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll catch you next time on the KrakCast.